Nasty Nate. Do you know what today is?
What day is it today, Bryan? I don't know.
Some would think it's the day that we record, which is a holiday in itself.
Absolutely.
But to most cultured folk, today is Bay Day. It is Beyonce Knowles.
Ooh.
Can I say her name like that? I'm gonna just call her Beyonce.
I think you could.
It's
You have my permission
Beyonce.
for whatever it's worth,
Okay,
Bryan.
thank you. It's Beyonce Knowles Carter's birthday. How old she is, I will never know because to
Hmm.
me she looks, like she just came out of
Doesn't
college. I
age.
don't know.
No,
I was
no
trying to,
aging.
yeah, I was trying to, yeah. And it made me think, what is your favorite Beyonce song?
For me, Bryan, like the if I think Beyonce, for whatever reason, the first song that comes to mind is "Drunk in Love."
Okay.
Oh, kitchen. Like,
Surfboard. Surfboard.
drunk in the kitchen.
Okay. Listen, I like that. I like that. Some people would have went. I would have pegged you. Pause. I would have pegged you as a singles lady guy.
Oh,
But okay.
that's a good one. But for whatever reason, you say Beyonce right now, it's drunk. There's just something about that song that if I hear that one, it gets stuck in my head for a little bit where I'm just like, oh,
No,
kitchen.
no. I get that. I get that. For me, it'll probably it's usually it's between Halo and Ego. Do you know Ego?
What? Maybe. I
It,
mean,
it,
for a
it
lot of
goes.
these
I'll
songs,
sing.
yeah.
It's too big. It's too wide. It's too strong. It won't fit. It's too much. It's too tough. He talk like this. Plus, he can back it up. He got a big ego.
There you go,
Such a
Bryan.
big
Hmm.
ego. I love his big ego. It's too much. He walk like this. Plus, he can back it up.
Happy Bay Day, everybody.
Happy
Speaking of
Bay Day.
happy days, though, this week we're talking Dan Le Batard Show 20 years.
20. That is today. Cente uno.
Did you say 31 in Spanish? Did you just say
That's bent. That's
Vente?
bent.
Vente.
There you go.
Uno or Vente. You added like a uno in there. It was like,
Relax. Relax. 20 years of Le Batard. 20 years. How long have you been on this train of 20 years, Nate?
oh, it's kind of hard for me to book like the very first time I started listening to them, but I'd say like being a daily listener, it's been 8 years. I think 2016
Age.
was when I finally, for whatever reason, for like 3 or 4 years, whenever their first years at ESPN were, I was like, I'm only going to catch them. I liked them. I enjoyed them. They were my favorite sports radio show when they made it over to ESPN. But for whatever reason, I was like, I'm not going to be a podcast guy. I just was for fighting listening to podcasts and making it a daily thing. But it was like 2016, 2017. Started doing like this yard project in my back house. And so it was over the summer. Every single day, I'd get out there early, time my start with the start of the Le Batard Show, and I'd listen daily on the ESPN app. And then I was like, forget this. What am I doing? And I started doing the podcast. And I've been hooked ever since. In 20 years, celebrate across the decades, as Stu said, although technically they've been doing it across the decades since, 10 years and one day. But Stu sent out that tweet, 20 years across the decades. How about you, Bryan?
That it's interesting that you went from not wanting to be a podcast guy to being the world's fastest
I know,
podcast
right?
Le Batard listener.
And now like every single
Um,
podcast too. Too many podcasts.
Maybe that's because you know your personality. You
Yeah.
know, I'm just going to
See?
become that guy. For me, it's much like you. It was Man, I really like those guys on ESPN. I really like listening to those guys when I get a chance to. And although I was a podcast listener, the show, I got introduced to it in visual form. So I never even thought to listen to them as a podcast. I always thought the ESPN app was wonky. It always didn't really
Yeah.
work.
Hmm.
Yeah, it
Totally
wasn't
agree.
of the highest quality. So I wouldn't really give them a chance on the ESPN Watch app or ESPN whatever app. And it wasn't until the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, and everyone kind of did their hunkering down, and then we kind of slow rolled back into a world where we could go outside. I was like, I got some extra time throughout the day. What the hell's on? And this happened to be a show that was still trying to work out the kinks through Zoom and stuff. And then after they got back into the studio, I just kind of kept going with it, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been missing out on this for so long. So it hasn't been the entirety of the 20 years for me or the entirety of the decade,
Hmm.
but it was just because, it's how the hell am I going to listen in the middle of the day? I was always more of Jamel Hill, behind what's it, behind the numbers, not behind the numbers. Um,
I mean, she had his and hers, but I think it was
his
something
and
with the
hers,
numbers before
and then the
that.
numbers joint, because in All Around the Horn,
Uh-huh.
PTI, because those would come out around after work, right? Like
Hmm.
around to the time when I would get home. This show would be off the air by then. So yeah, it's about 4 or 5 years for me. 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years of this amazing show, and I wish I could pay them for all of the content, hilarity, and good feelings I've gotten from this show. This show is going places that I never thought I could predict, because the way Dan talks about it sometimes, it's almost concerning. It's
Zumo
almost concerning.
TV for
Yeah. It's almost like, hey, you got one guy who's referring to the sponsor as Draft Crangs, and they're always dropping the ball on content, missing huge moments and stuff like that.
against the spread.
And to find out that not only are they seemingly not going anywhere, but they seem to be going everywhere, including Peacock following Dan Patrick. What's your take on the recent announcement with the Peacock and Timu and Zumo and
Sling,
Globo and Fubo and yeah, and
Roku.
all of these? Yeah, what's up with that?
I think it's exciting that they're at Peacock, and I was curious, like, does that mean they're off like HBO Max? But I guess they're still on Max, so it's pretty impressive that they're able to work out all these deals, and like them joining Peacock doesn't get them like off of
Yeah,
Max per se. So I guess they were able to join Max and not have a non-compete or whatever you would want to call it. So, I mean, it is a big announcement as all these streamers are starting to build their sports stuff, because that's becoming one of the big things where, like, if you want to get people to watch your stuff, you got to have this live element. So, I was excited by it. Am I going to catch them on Peacock? No, because I watch them on YouTube and I listen to them as a podcast. I have my rhythm. It's not going to change anything.
yeah,
I'm excited that they're
same.
excited. Um, so it is like a big announcement for me. I was more excited about like the behind the bit stuff that they
Mm,
announced. With their first one being Peepo. I think that's a classic bit that people want to come back. We'll see. I think if the Miami keeps playing how they're playing, like Peepo is gonna come back, but they're gonna slow roll it. It looks like. But I was excited by the Peacock announcement, and I think they're on Sirius too. Is that another place where you can
yeah, yeah.
find them?
That was also. It's.
So
You saying the fact that they're able to kind of venture into all these different platforms while there not being any sort of restrictions on it
hmm
is super interesting, because I don't think I've seen anything else ever like that. And it's interesting that this show, who heralds itself as a pioneer, as a rebel, as a pirate in some sorts, is doing something that I have never seen done before.
Yeah.
And it's dope because you've heard Dan lament over and over and over, Mike Ryan as well, how much they miss having those random eyes on the show because people would just be perusing through ESPN and they go, oh, and then you'd retain some listeners through that. And this is seemingly a way to get that back. But like you, I have my, it's not for us. It's not for the people who get the show. It's for the people who don't know the show exists. Because I have my patterns, like you said, YouTube, Spotify. I've really moved over to just preferring YouTube. I actually don't even I'll do the podcast if I'm like mowing the lawn or something. But if it's not something, I'm always on YouTube, watching their YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And we're creatures of habit. And that's our habit. And I'm habitually on their YouTube because the visual aspect of the show is just so much more and adds so much more to it. You mentioned the behind the bit part. Whoa. Now, this seems like something completely 100% up the alley of Sir Mike Ryan. Like this whole, the production of it all, the philosophy behind it. It seems like also a way for him to kind of, he'll never run from his ability to pat himself on the shoulders. Like, actually, people is inspired by me and my friend group, da-da-da-da. What say you that the biggest and most drawing takeaway from the behind the bit people segment was Mike Ryan's facial hair choice? What?
I actually snapped a screenshot of that.
Oh my!
Because I was like,
God.
I could save this for God bless Highlight. Send out a picture, be like, that's my owner or something. If we get back on good terms, but you'll have to listen to God bless Highlight for that. So I've got that saved away. I actually, I thought that too. The facial hair choice too, but he definitely had like a radio producer vibe with
he definitely had a Bobby Boucher's father vibe.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that, Brian?
Do you we'll travel the world, we'll play football. His father, he looked just like his father. Speaking of facial hair, you got rid of the mustache, bro.
I got rid of it last week, Brian. I didn't have the mustache last week either.
It wasn't there last week?
Yeah, which everyone actually, Brian, that's a good point because I still want to talk a little bit more like 20th century, but we can put a timeout right here. This is Nasty Nate, Cousin B of the Dan Le Batard Show, and you're like, hey, what's up with this dude Nathan guy who's clean cut? He's not wearing sunglasses. Isn't this Nasty Nate?
Yeah.
Who's
like neutral
Suey?
Nate.
Isn't this Suey nominated Nasty Nate, who I heard during the best musical segment, who came up with hairs, which I'm sure just barely missed the cut for their OLIs that they played today on the show. I'm sure I was just like, just out of reach for that one there. But I'll still go by Nasty Nate. But when I created that moniker, Brian, it was with a clear goal to get the name said on the show. Because it was like, hey, Dan Le Batard Show, we do a lot here, and other people are getting mentioned. And I'm like, it's because I got these funny nicknames. So Nasty Nate has been now said on the show. Nasty Nate is Suey nominated. I'm actually working on another parody song around the Chris Cody drawstring thing. We'll see what happens of it.
My issue with the parody songs is the show moves so fast that if you don't feel motivated to get the shit done in like a day, it's almost like because I like with you have been in a spot where I've had these ideas. I'm like, yeah, and I was like, get to it this weekend, and then I'm like, that's not a topic anymore. We're not discussing this anymore. And then the perfectionist in me is, I'm not gonna tailor the shit. Ill. I'm representing us. I will never ever do anything like that. With that being said, do you know there's a comedian by the name of Nasty Nate?
No, I had no idea.
There's a comedian by the name of Nasty Nate. He performs in the roast battles, the Tony Hinchcliffe roast battles down in the Comedy Store. Just keep an eye. You might have to fight him. You might have to squabble. And just saying, just saying, just saying.
We'll see now that I've made it to the big time, right? So
20 years. Do you have any high expectations for any grandiose things to come out of this celebration? I did see some stuff stirring up online about Hockman kind of jumping the shark and saying that he wasn't contacted or that Dan wanted nothing to do with him. And then I kind of, saw Mike Ryan like, hey, actually, I was going to reach out to you.
That.
What any details on that? I mean, you know more about that stuff than I do.
I mean, I think if you're on Twitter, it's just an interesting thing of like, Hockman put it out there. Like, I heard Dan doesn't want me contacted, and I don't know the specifics of it. I know Mike Ryan has talked about like Mark Hockman did an AMA on the Reddit and covered stuff and kind of has put out his own narrative of the separation between like him and Dan. And I guess like it seems like he's going to be a part of it. He should absolutely be a part of it because he was a major part of the show, and seems like Mike is going to reach out to him. But I don't know anybody well enough to weigh in on it other than it seems like Hawk's trying to put out a narrative that maybe isn't there because this is Mike's thing, not Dan's thing. It does seem like him and Dan, like, they've moved on in terms of a relationship, but again, this is outside perspective. That's all I've seen. For me, what I'm thinking about with Behind the Bit is like, what are the upcoming bits that they're going to do a Behind the Bit on? And I think what could be a really good one, a seminal moment in the show, I'd love to see a Behind the Bit with Stu Gatz and Jonathan Coachman of when he had his observation talking about his tan, and if they could get Abby to be a part of it, right? Maybe
they can get Coachman to be a part of it.
Absolutely get Coachman to be a part of it if he will. But I mean, he was pretty. I don't think he has a good relationship. But if they could get him, get Abby to be a part of it and share, like, right? I think that would be a great Behind the Bit that needs to happen.
Listen, these aren't your mother's Dan Le Batard show with Stu Gatz and shipping container folks. I hope people in the old guard know, you might have laughed them off in the ESPN days of how them guys doing some stuff in Miami, but you laughed them off and slowly realized, oh, snap. They're kind of doing something here, and they're kind of first to the plate when it comes to transforming your whole mediascape. And you may have laughed off the idea of, I'm this fucking Stu Gatz guy, but you got to kind of consider it these days. I'm interested to see what kind of pull they have when it comes to the bit piece and see who they can bring in. I would like to see it Behind the Bit dedicated to Zagacki. I know it's a simple... It's a simple, basic show bit, but I would like to see if there's more from it. Like if there's like, let's actually, dive into it. But that's dope. That's dope. That's dope. And now that we got all of the aforementioned necessaries out of the way, you know what tomorrow what today is, right, Nate?
It's the first week of Battle Court, Bryan.
It is the first week. Oh, wait, no. Wait, yes, that. But stay tuned for God Bless Highlight to hear more about that. But it is the first week of football. Football is back. Nate, it is back, and it's blacker than ever. And it's badder than ever.
But Bryan, it is blacker than ever, too, when it comes to your starting quarterbacks. Is that where you were going with it? 15?
That's exactly
15
where I was going
starting
with
quarterbacks?
We got Patrick Mahomes and Lamar, I catch COVID every week, Jackson kicking it off to start this season. The easiest question of all, who you got coming out? Game 1. 2024 season.
Well, Bryan, I think the first thing everyone's talking about is, can the Chiefs repeat? That's like your number one storyline. Number one storyline. Number one storyline. Number two, Brian, is when's Travis Kelce gonna pop the question? Um,
Did you see the rumors that were spreading around?
what's the rumors, Brian?
According to Travis Kelce's folks, he is getting attorneys involved with some possible leakage of the emergency plan for how to process Travis and Taylor breaking up. There were leaked photos online. Make sure you look this up and make sure you realize where you heard it first. Here, the Dan Le Batard
I gotta follow up with
podcast,
my wife because she's locked in on the Taylor Swift stuff.
There were some documents leaked online that were supposedly for how Travis's PR team should handle him and her dissolving their relationship.
Wow.
Reportedly, it's false, but reading through it, bullet by bullet, you can make out the It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. And now it has some people believing, is the relationship itself, was it all fugazi?
Football Illuminati.
Football Illuminati. It's coming, baby. It's coming. But keep going. Second story.
I mean, who's gonna challenge the Chiefs, Brian? Right? And I think you've got a lot of rookie quarterbacks or younger quarterbacks. For a lot of people like CJ Stroud, is he gonna continue his success that he had from his rookie season? You've got Caleb Williams, who everyone's saying is set up, has the best setup for any first overall pick ever, right? If you think about it, he's set up the best for success. I said that really well, you guys. But who's gonna push the Chiefs, Brian? And you know what? The Chiefs aren't gonna do it. They're not gonna go back to back to back. I'm already gonna say it, Brian. You know who I think, Brian, is gonna win it all this year if I had to pick? It's the Dallas Cowboys.
That's my pick. That's my pick. No, you're jinxing us now. You did this before. You've done this before. Yes.
I just think, Brian, they're going to go undefeated. They're going to run the table. They're going to blow everybody out. I don't think they're going to play a single close game this season. I like Dak Prescott to set records for yards thrown and touchdowns thrown in a season. I like CeeDee Lamb to break all the records. He got that money. Zeke, money. Zeke is well rested. He's really well rested. He has not had to do much of anything for several years. He's very well rested since his last time as a Cowboy where he played center. He's ready to get back at it.
Acting like he didn't play last year.
Last time but he's really well rested.
But why are you acting like he didn't play last year? He had a very productive career in New England.
Okay.
Listen, you're going to come in here like that, and I'm going to come in here like we're trying to work on the baby. Listen, I'm getting it out the way now. MVP of this season, Dak Dakota Rain Prescott. Saying it right now. Super Bowl matchup for this year? Oh, yeah, best believe it. The three-peat will be in effect because the Chiefs will be getting back to the Super Bowl. But guess what? Oh, my God, the best stories are the ones that come up short because they will be defeated by said MVP Dakota Rain Prescott.
What a story.
And that's real. Cowboys are going to go 12-5.
And win the Super Bowl. I'm high on the Bengals. Joe Burrow back. He's going to stay healthy.
You think Jamar Chase is gonna? He was at practice today, but he's not happy about his contract.
Yeah, that's something to watch out for. I think that's going to get ironed out. And Jamar Chase, you can trust him. I mean, I need him. I filled out a lot of best balls, you guys, and on a lot of them, I had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow as my stacks. So I need those to hit so Daddy can make a little bit of that money. You know what I'm saying? I like the Bengals. I don't like the Titans. I don't like the moves we're making. But hey, our division sucks. Although Texans have, I think, taken a step up way above everybody.
Don't do it. Don't do it because you're about to say it.
Say what?
So as I'm perusing the NFL landscape, I'm still having, even though preseason is gone and went, I'm still having my moments of, oh yeah, he plays for them. When I was seeing some preview stuff for the Ravens Chiefs, I gotta keep reminding myself that Derrick Henry is in Baltimore. I don't know why that's not a bigger talking point. With that being said, though, is there anyone that you're still getting that, oh yeah, he's there now feeling from? Because the guy who last gave it to me was Stephon Diggs. He's in Houston.
Way to just.
What is he doing in Houston?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up and breaking my heart again, Bryan, that Derrick Henry's no longer a Titan. And it's like, as I look at the sporting landscape, it's like, what reasons do I have to root for my favorite teams? The best thing I got going for me is Manu's still a Cyclone. But
I don't know if that's
who's giving me the best. Oh, you know what's another one, Bryan? And it's the same team. He's on the Texans now, but I'm always like, oh yeah, he's on the Texans. He's not on the Bengals. It's Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon is a Texan?
Yeah, he's not. He's a Texan, Bryan. Because let me tell you, I know this because guess how many times I'm doing my best ball draft and I'm like, I got Joe B. I got Jamar Chase. Who's the Bengals running back? Zach Moss and Chase Brown. What am I going to do here?
It's not like country singers. Damn. So yeah, I look at this upcoming NFL season kind of like that season in the NBA where Milwaukee won the championship. Where, hey, it's okay for us to have a season where someone randomly wins a championship and it has nothing to do with legacy. It has nothing to do with dynasty. It has nothing to do with shifting powers. It's just, parity. And I think for the first time in a while, because of just the landscape, because think about who the vets are with teams that can compete. Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott,
Josh Allen.
He's a vet now. Like, that's crazy. Lamar Jackson, like, it's crazy we're saying that. And when you have all of these pieces that are still waiting for that next foot to drop on their career, it's just someone's going to get there. Someone's going to get there. So I think the time's up for the Niners. I think, hey, they don't do it this year. They're obviously done. Brock Purdy, you got to pay his punk ass. The Eagles, I hope the Eagles and the Packers don't make it back from Brazil, if you ask me. That's
another one where I was like, what? They're playing another game on Friday too? I had no idea that that's a Friday game. I pulled up the ESPN app because I'm getting ready for DraftKings Sundays, right? And hopefully the show is going to do the same thing they've done the past couple of years, have a Sunday league game for $3 or whatever. And I'm like, what's the Sunday slate? And I was like, there's a Friday. That game is so we're getting Thursday, we're getting Friday, we're getting this is starting to be the new future of the NFL where it's going to be an 18-game schedule and they're going to start doing a lot more. I think they're going to push for more games outside of. You heard it here first, folks. Don't be surprised if there's more Friday games. I said it. Nasty Nate. You heard it here first. If you heard it somewhere else, you're wrong. You heard it here first. They heard it from me. I've been saying this to my wife. I've been saying this to my kid who just started kindergarten. Tell your teacher the NFL's pushing for Fridays. Thank you. And it's all over the place. And can we please get a cheaper package to watch the games, NFL? Come on. Just you've already got us all addicted. Let us get what we want for a little bit cheaper, please.
Well, speaking of addiction, there's no one in the Dan Le Batard verse that seems to have a greater addiction to college football than, I almost said our very own, because of the, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna fucking say it. Than our very own Lucy Rodine and Jessica Smetana, both of them, right? Yeah, they're both.
Yeah, all biases aside, it's them.
Like there seemed to be no one more addicted to that heroin that is college football than those two on the show. And Mike,
Yeah.
with college football roaring back with the large announcement of upsets and disappointing losses, and it was the first time where I was like, you might got an argument here. I'm seeing everyone go, was this the catch of the year? Was this the interception of the year? And I'm like, what the guys? It's week one. And then I saw the catch, and then I saw the interception. It was like, oh, you might have something here. But with college football being back in its biggest form, everyone's still in it outside of Florida. Everyone still has a chance outside of Florida.
State.
Any takeaways from week one of the college football slate?
I think for me, just the biggest takeaway is, when's the last time you've seen like such an epic collapse from a program like Florida State? Undefeated, they don't make the playoffs, get blowed out by Georgia, and now lose a nail biter to Georgia Tech, and just dominated by Boston College. Dominated. Like, it's a big time collapse. Yeah, those aren't good. Those aren't teams that people looked at as being good. I think Boston College was maybe like, I've heard a couple things of like, look out for them here. They have like a dynamic player at quarterback, and I think it's Castellanos or something like that.
Castellanos, yeah. They've always been labeled as scrappy.
Mm-hmm.
Put them in the bucket as Rutgers. Like, you can't sleep on them, but you're gonna win.
But I'm 28-13 or what to Boston College, and now George, like, I'm quite like, are they even going to make a bowl game to go from like number 10 to like, they might not even make a bowl game in an ACC that's not that deep or challenging. So to me, that's the biggest story, is just the collapse of that. And, excitement around a 12-team playoff. We'll see how it's going to be a different feel as the season goes on and we get to the end of the season, how that's going to feel.
Do you think the dominance exuded by the blue bloods of the college football landscape, such as the Florida States, and the inability to compete on the lower end, do you see those shifts happening? And is this a result of NIL a couple years later? Like, is this a result of the transfer portal and NIL allowing players? Stu mentioned this, and I thought it was actually a good point that Stu mentioned, which I thought was weird because I was like, what the hell? Stu? Holy crap. But him mentioning that, is it the, damn, where is he? Syracuse. I think Syracuse has an Ohio. Sorry. Syracuse has an Ohio State quarterback.
Yeah, McCord or something like that.
Yeah, that they wouldn't have had normally. Like, a lot of these players are finding themselves in schools where, yeah, the money's there, but Cade McCormick. Look what Cade McCormick did in Iowa, right? He was in Michigan.
Yeah, I think you got
yeah, and it's like, these players usually sit the Alabama team that has Tua and Jalen Hurts and McCorkle Jones. Well, guess what? Now they only got one of them, and those other two got to go somewhere, because if they're good enough to be in Alabama, they're good enough to play somewhere.
Tell me about that dynamic McCorkle.
And he was a Pro Bowler, which is crazy, right? And when those players get on teams that were a quarterback away, or are we seeing a shift in a more even college landscape? Obviously, we know people are Georgia's still going to Georgia. We know this, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm just looking around and I'm like, yo, you can't write off some of these teams anymore.
What do I know, Brian? I'm an elementary school teacher. I don't know what's happening in. Is NIL responsible for this? Why are you asking me this difficult question, Brian? What? You want me to an equivalent fraction? How do you make equivalent fractions? You use the big one. You got a 2 over a 2, a 3 over a 3. And as I look at the college football landscape, Brian, as an elementary school teacher, what I know is I don't see that big one anymore, Brian. This is not your daddy's college football playoff. But what do I know? I'm an elementary. I'm an
I'm an
elementary school teacher. Bryan, what do I know? Is it NIL? Is our kids more talented these days? Is it that we can see more stuff? I don't know, Bryan, but it's not the same. I don't see that equivalent 1-to-1, 2-to-2 that when I can look back at it, I see it's not 4 in the playoff, it's 12 in the playoff. That's not equivalent. That's not the same. The SEC, that's not the SEC I know of. The Pac-12, what? No, the Pac-2, that's not equivalent. It's not the same, Bryan. And is NIL responsible for this? Or is money, is greed? Is greed what's responsible, Bryan? Is it the human condition? Is it the heart? I don't know, Bryan. I'm just
Listen,
trying to teach kids.
Nate,
I don't know.